All right, so the one that I think is probably the most helpful graph is to be able to show what's going to happen with all these different plants, all this different data over time. And so there's two different ways that you can show, how do the transpiration rates of these different plants compare, right? So you could kind of do something similar to this graph that we made before, but have all of these as different, right? You could have RK, LL, MC1, right, all in the same graph, but you can only, like with a bar graph, you can only plot that one transpiration rate. I mean, you could do like a stacked bar or something, but I really want to see what happens over time, and do these transpiration rates change over time? So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, right, I actually want to look at what's the total water loss for each plant, and then how does that change over time? And you're going to see that it looks really nice because you can see the slope of the graph will actually be your transpiration rate if you're looking at the total water loss over time. And I still want to keep in this per surface area so that I can compare the different plants. So what I'm going to do is for each one, I'm going to say, like, I want to find out, actually, so I'm going to call this, it's my like total water loss for each plant. And I'm actually going to start with, for all of them, at 0. It's going to be 0. And I want that because I want to show where they're starting from, and I want to look at that line that will show me that first rate. So at 2 hours, the water loss is going to be, the starting mass minus, right, how much water did they lose over this time. But this is a really interesting thing. If I put in this little dollar sign, actually, I'm going to not put in the dollar sign and show you what this will do. So, now I have water loss for the first hour. But now this one is going to give me the water loss between hours 2 and 5.5. For another situation, I might want that, but I actually want something that will automatically let me calculate the total water loss at each time point. And so if I put in this dollar sign, it's going to, when I drag that formula, stick with the value in C16. And so now I'm going to show you the difference, right? If I drag these, now this is total water loss, and this is the total water loss from the beginning. And so the nice thing is, if I drag this over, right, for every, I don't need that one, for every, right, data point, has that dollar sign in there as well. So, and actually, what you can do is, right, when I drag that over to here, I can also drag this down. And now we can check for this last one, right? Now I have water loss for hour 2, total water loss for hour 5, total water loss for hour 22. So now, oh, whoops, I actually forgot. I also want the, the water loss per surface area. So I'm going to say, give me this water loss, and then divide it by this surface area. But again, I always want to use that surface area. So I'm going to put in this dollar sign. Right, so now, and you know what? I also want to multiply this by, instead of doing millimeters, I'm going to do, what did I decide to do for this one? I think I multiplied by 10, I'm going to do this, multiply by 10,000 to actually have it be per meter squared. And this is going to give me some numbers that I can deal with a little bit better. So I'm going to do the same thing. So tied to that same surface area, but I can check this again. So I'm going to pull this over, right? All those should be right. I'm going to pull these down, and then I'm going to check. That looks good. Total water loss per surface area. And again, I don't want all these decimal points, so I'm going to decrease those to something a little bit more manageable. Okay, so I think the only thing I need here now is I want time to be my x-axis. So I'm going to keep this here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select, I eventually want the average, and I'm holding down my, I think on my computer it's the option or the control, it's one of those to the left of the space bar, right? I just want to select this identifier because these are my different series that I want. I'm going to copy all those, and then I'm going to paste them here. So these are the lines that I actually want on my graph. And then I want an average of ATT at time 0. And then this one I should just be able to pull down, but let's check. Right, so average of the transpiration rates at time 22. And so here's what, to do this, right, you could drag this over. It's not going to fit exactly right. So like RKK is actually from H to L. So I could just change this number here, or sorry, this letter. So H to L. Right now this should be, can look here, right, that's RKK. Or I could just type in each one. Oops. But L is M through Q. Oops. And I might actually just do this for a couple. You don't need me to do every single one. MC is R through V. JR is W through AA. Yeah, so I think if I do this one, you'll at least kind of, maybe do one more. Ian is AB through AF. So again, like the advantage here is I've got a ton of data. I didn't really do that much processing, but I'm going to be able to see this all together on my graph, AG through AK. I'm going to do one more. AG through AK. And actually, for this one, I'm actually not going to do the standard deviation. Again, Excel could do this really easily. I could get an error bar in every one of these. I would basically make the same chart and make the standard deviation for this average, this average, this average. And I could get an error bar in every single one of these points. In Google Sheets, it's going to take me a lot more time. I could do it, but that's going to be a little bit more complicated. Okay, so now I'm just going to try this by selecting these, and let's just see what this looks like. And I'm guessing it's going to look kind of weird, right? Like this is my hour 0. These are like, this could work, but honestly, like I want time on a, and I don't have an x-axis here. So sometimes you have to say, look, the x-axis is, and actually I'm going to select these, see if they get my, if I type time in here, time in hours, no, they don't have it. And they're actually going to try to, you know what, I don't want a column chart. So I either want a line, you could also do a scatter plot, but actually I like the line one better. A scatter plot, you probably could add a trend line for the different data points, but I actually really want my line graph because I want to see this is the rate of transpiration. This line here, the slope, is the rate of transpiration for JR1 in that first 2 hours. And then I can see how this rate of transpiration changes. So I've got my, this is interesting too. So notice that Google Sheets plotted time as a series. That's definitely not like this weird, this is just plotting 2 by 2, 5 by 5. So that's nothing. So I want to remove that. And so now I've got my different, so these are my different types of plants. And then B is labels. That's kind of weird. I don't exactly know why they did that, but it seems to be working okay. And then customize, I might just say like this is time in hours. Oops. And then this is actually my total water loss. But this, I'm not entirely sure, but it's grams per surface area, which I think I changed it to meter squared to make it bigger. But hopefully you get the point there. So I just wanted to show you this one because it really includes all of the data for the different time points. And this allows you to talk about, what are the trends in the first 2 hours? And then how does that trend change? Like the transpiration rates are lower in, from 2 to 5 hours. And then most of them, like looking at the slope of those lines, kind of lower even more and you can compare a lot of these different plants. Ideally, you would have an error bar on there too to show, how much variation was there in those 5 different trials. But that is way easier to do in Excel. And actually we can try to do it for the bar graph comparing the transpiration rates between the different types. So hopefully this helps. Again, I think that's the graph that actually has the most information, except it doesn't have the error bars on it.